Welcome back to the channel. I'm EZP40. Today we are going to be ranking every attachment in Black Ops 3 Zombies. So with attachments in Black Ops 3 Zombies, you are able to customize your weapons in the weapon kit selection. Weapons that were a part of the DLC stuff, that's not going to be able to be a part of the weapon kits. Basically, this video is for people who aren't quite sure what to do with attachments or just would like some recommendations. But I thought it would be kind of fun to rank some of these, so let's just go ahead and get into it. The criteria is actually very short and simple with this one. The main thing we are looking for in this is practicality. That's mainly what we are looking for, but overall we want to know how useful the attachment is and how many weapons it'll be useful for. Some of the attachments are good for pretty much everything, but there's also some others that may only be good for a certain class. So I think we should just go ahead and get started. Starting off at last place, number 14. Liberty Ballistic CPU. I'm sorry, I had to add in that joke. For Ballistic CPU, this is only available for sniper rifles, and the purpose of it is to make your weapons sway less. That way you can hit shots easier with the snipers, but a couple of issues with this. One, the only sniper with a major sway is the SVG-100, which just so happens to be the worst sniper in the game. Two, and more importantly, using the ballistic CPU means you can't use an optic for your sniper, meaning you have to stick with the default scope, meaning you can't put a better optic on your sniper. Thirdly, if you have Deadshot Daiquiri, which I don't recommend you do, but if you have it, the entirety of ballistic CPU is completely pointless because your weapon's not going to really sway anyway, so Deadshot's just going to take care of that. Overall, I do not recommend ballistic CPU whatsoever. If you are using it, I don't know why you are. I strongly recommend you don't. At number 13, the Recon Scope. Pretty much like in a traditional ACOG scope, it's a scope with a high zoom. The Recon Scope is available for SMGs, ARs, LMGs, and snipers. Something cool about the Recon Scope is that for SMGs, ARs, and LMGs, the weapon sway when aiming is decreased to almost nothing. Unfortunately, in a game mode like Zombies, scopes aren't as much of a necessity, and bonuses like less idle sway aren't something that you'll really take into account, and they're not going to be a huge game changer in the game of Call of Duty Zombies. As you saw as well earlier with Ballistic CPU, it's just not going to be something that's that effective. Of the optics, I believe this is the least useful for Zombies, as it doesn't really benefit enough where needed. It's not a bad sight, but the others, in my opinion, are just a little bit more practical. Number 12, grip. And I already know people are going to ask some questions about here, because grip is a very popular attachment, but honestly, in Black Ops 3 Zombies, the grip is just not really needed. It's available on SMGs, ARs, and LMGs, and of those weapons, there's really only a couple of them that you might need a grip for. The Vesper, the VMP, and the Pharaoh. All three of those are SMGs, which if you're high rounding and you just need these weapons for dead wire or AATs in general, at best the grip will help a tiny bit, and at worst it'll be completely irrelevant. The whole point of the grip is to have less recoil, leading to hitting targets easier, and that's great and all, but the Bo3 weapons already have really low recoil, meaning grip isn't something that'll be necessary in the long run. It can come in handy at some points, but overall, I just don't think it's going to be as useful as the other attachments. Number 11, long barrel. I'm just going to say straight up, unless you're using a shotgun, don't use long barrel. Long barrel is available on SMGs, ARs, and shotguns, and its whole purpose is to have a bit of extra range, but in Zombies, this has no genuine upside when playing unless you're using shotguns. And even then, it doesn't have a huge benefit in that regard. Zombies is a very close quarters game, and even when you shoot zombies from a distance, long barrel still isn't needed usually unless you're in a spot such as the ZNS camping spot when you do the Easter egg. But even for that, you'll usually have a wonder weapon, and then the LMGs that are available, like the Dingo and the Gorgon and the RPK. The Dragon's available. All of those are better for camping, so I don't know why you would need something like an AR for that. I've tested the one-shot capabilities for each weapon in the game and tested some of them from a distance as well, and this is without long barrel. And the range for practically every AR is fine anyway, and you won't notice a difference unless you are literally shooting across the map. And if you're using SMGs, I don't know why you'd be shooting from that far anyway, so that just leaves shotguns, which it does help a little bit, But if it wasn't for shotguns, I would have put long barrel as the second worst attachment in the game, with only ballistic CPU being worse. If you're going to use an assault rifle or an SMG and you have the choice between long barrel and grip, I do think grip is more useful, but the reason grip is lower is because shotguns benefit more from long barrel than grip does for the ARs and the SMGs. Number 10, thermal scope. Bo3's thermal scope is actually alright, and I like using this on my snipers in multiplayer, but in zombies, this doesn't help out in most scenarios. However, I know the speedrunning community loves to use thermal, mostly on the M8 and the HVK. It is available on ARs, LMGs, and snipers. If you're a speedrunner, I can see why you'd want to use the thermal scope and you'd want it to be a little bit higher in this list. But for this list, I'm going to have to lower it just a bit, because if you're not speedrunning, I just don't see much of a purpose in using this, especially ahead of the other optics. There's just much better options in my opinion. Number 9, BOA3. The BOA3, or the Biometric Object Analyzer, is kind of like a red dot sight, but the catch is that it lights up red when you have an enemy in sight, and it lights up blue when you're aiming at a friendly. It is available for SMGs, ARs, LMGs, and shotguns. I did say it was somewhat like the red dot sight, but this has a little bit more zoom than the traditional red dot sight. Personally, the reason this is lower than the other optics ahead of this is because in zombies, the upsides to the BOA3 isn't needed as much, and when you compare it with the traditional sights, in my opinion, it's just a less clean version of those other sights and ends up being a worse version of the traditional sights. Which is why I have this lower, but if you prefer using this over the others, I can understand it. But from playing, it feels much smoother using the sights that are ahead of this, but I still think this is a fine attachment. Number 8, Varix 3. This is probably the most interesting optic to talk about, probably because it's essentially a hybrid optic that has two different zooms. A zoom that is similar to the recon scope, and a zoom that doesn't zoom in very much at all, and is more similar to the traditional red dot sight. Varix 3 is available for SMGs, ARs, LMGs, and snipers. One interesting thing about the Varix 3 is that you have a little bit less recoil when using this optic. In recent tests, I tried this on various weapons, but most notably the VMP, KN44, HVK30, and the Dingo. And honestly, I much preferred the non-zoomed in version of the sight. The recoil is noticeably better from the get-go when using this, and although it's great for camping, one thing I don't care quite much for is when training. The scope is so big, and sometimes it'll take up space on your screen, which can hinder your vision and make it a little bit harder to see zombies in front of you. Ultimately, I would say that if you're camping, this is a solid optic to use, and I recommend trying to use it on some of your weapons. But if you're training, I'd pass on this one. There isn't much upside, even though the recoil is a little bit better. It's not a huge factor in zombies, especially when training, which does kind of suck, but zombies prioritizes qualities like speed and ammo over qualities like precision and distance. It's just how zombies has always been, and it's why this is going to be ranking lower than most of the other attachments. At number 7, Quick Draw. I think with Quick Draw, I used to never use this in zombies when Bo3 was at its peak, but as time went on and I used it more and more, it was something that I found to be a little bit better than grip and long barrel. Quick Draw will allow you to aim quicker, and it's available for SMGs, ARs, shotguns, LMGs, and pistols. This, BOA3 and Varix 3, I had pretty much right next to each other, but I think of the three, this is probably the most useful, simply because it's not an optic. It's not a make or break attachment, but it certainly isn't going to hurt you to ADS quicker in zombies, especially if you get like trapped or something. You don't really need this on a shotgun or pistol, but LMG's ADS speed is kind of slow, so it'll help for that. And SMGs and ARs benefit more from Quick Draw than grip and long barrel in my opinion, unless you're using the VMP, Vesper, or Pharaoh, which benefits more from grip, but not much more. However, the other SMGs and ARs benefit more from Quick Draw. At number 6, Stock. Stock is going to allow you to move around quicker when ADSing. It's available for SMGs, ARs, shotguns, LMGs, and snipers. If you're camping, I think Stock is great to have, especially on LMGs, to move around a little bit more in case you need to back up if you're getting overrun. Stock is also really helpful for going against boss zombies, as you can back up quicker as you aim at a Panzer or a Margwa or wherever you're trying to take down. because they're going to sprint towards you, and it's ultimately going to help you in Easter egg runs as well if you're forced into a rough part of the map with a boss zombie. Again, this isn't a make or break attachment, but it has definitely come in handy before, and I do recommend using this on pretty much every single weapon that you can use it on. At number 5, laser sight. Laser is an attachment on the side of the weapon that helps for hip-fire aiming. It's not an optic, and it's available for SMGs, ARs, shotguns, LMGs, and pistols. Unfortunately, not available for snipers, as this would benefit them very well. Bo2 had them, Bo3 does not. However, this is still a good attachment to have, especially when you're high rounding, so it'll be a little bit easier to hip fire into the crowds to prop dead wire or whatever AAT you're using. I also find this very helpful on shotguns, as you don't really need to aim with shotguns in the first place. This is going to allow you to be a little bit more precise when you use them. It's just a really convenient attachment to have on you, since sometimes you don't have the time to ADS in zombies. And I don't think it's a necessity. Again, most of these aren't, but I do think it's one of the better attachments that you can have. At number 4, and we're also going to include number 3 in this one, we are going to talk about the reflex sight and the elo sight. So the reason we are going over these together is because they're just really similar, and this debate between the two has gone on since the game has released. Pretty much just a good old-fashioned red dot sight against an orange illuminated sight that doesn't have really a top part, but they are very similar. Like I said, for years people have debated between the better option between these two sights, and honestly, on some weapons, I prefer the elo, and on other weapons, I prefer the reflex. But for most weapons, I actually end up preferring the reflex sight. Now, that doesn't make it straight up better than the elo. Like I said, this is a comparison mostly that comes down to preference. However, when ranking these two, there is one factor that comes into play that just can't be ignored. Reflex is available for SMGs, ARs, LMGs, shotguns, and pistols. Elo is available for all of those and snipers, which is going to end up giving it the advantage that it needs to be above reflex on this list, because it's going to be very helpful to use on sniper rifles and zombies, especially a weapon like the Dragon, which is one of the best weapons in the game. Other than availability, they're on the same level in terms of usefulness, and I strongly recommend using these sights ahead of any of the other ones, given you'll just have an easier time hitting shots. They're just the go-to for sights. At number 2, rapid fire. Rapid fire is a very simple attachment. Your weapons shoot faster, and it's available on every single one of them. Rapid fire on most weapons only gives it about a 6.5% boost in fire rate, so it doesn't sound that great, but the more you use it, the more noticeable it is when you go back to not using it. While it is very helpful for most weapons, there are a couple that can definitely go without. The Vesper and the VMP, to be precise, are weapons that really aren't needed aside from AAT usage, so not using rapid fire for those weapons will be fine. The weapons I find this helps the most are definitely the shotguns. The whole point in using rapid fire isn't only to up the fire rate, but also to increase your overall DPS. The reason why is because obviously you want to kill quicker, and if you can kill quicker, boss zombies are going to be taken down much quicker. And when you're using rapid fire on your weapons, it's going to greatly benefit this. LMGs benefit from this too quite a bit, especially the Gorgon, which has a really slow fire rate, but with rapid fire really holds down zombies much better than without rapid fire. I strongly recommend using this on anything you intend on using that isn't exclusively going to be used for AATs. This is going to be one of the most important attachments by far. And at number 1, fast mags. The obvious choice for number 1. Fast mags makes you reload 50% faster, and it's available for every single weapon in the weapon kit, except for obviously the XM53 and the Bowie knife. This is the same effectiveness of reload speed as Speed Cola. So if you have both, you're essentially going to have 2 Speed Colas. This should be a no-brainer to use on literally every single weapon you have. This mostly helps the LMGs since they have slower reloads, but ARs make reloads instant. Really, for most weapons, the reload is hardly an issue, and again, in zombies, speed is prioritized, and with fast mags, this is going to help you out more than any other attachment in any scenario. Whether you're high rounding, running the Easter egg, casually camping, speed running, whatever the case may be, it'll be a much needed attachment, and it's by far the best attachment in this game. Well, that's going to be it for today. I understand I have not posted in several months, but I am grateful for the patience and for the support that has gone on even without me posting on YouTube. I have been very busy with several different things in life. I'm not someone who has a ton of time on my hands to make YouTube videos constantly, but I do try to get to them when I can. And I do appreciate the support continuously. I have a few different ways to go about my next few videos. I have several different things I've been wanting to make, several different things I've been wanting to post. I intend on eventually finishing off that weapon rigging series at some point, but it is going to have to be a little bit delayed, unfortunately, because I've just got so much other stuff going on. And in the meantime, I have other bits of zombies content that I can post, other ideas that I have. So yeah, in the meantime, that's what's going to be happening. But that's going to be it for today. I will talk to you all later. See ya.